Well, good evening, everyone. You join me here live tonight on the Adrian Show from our studio here in London. And it's certainly been a busy couple of evenings within the United Kingdom for all, I'm sure we can all agree. We've seen a government collapse, a military government take place of the regime, and a change of Prime Minister as well. An entire change of government, in fact, as well as petitions being rejected, parties causing espionage, politicians breaking the law, and much, much more. So, on tonight's airing of the show, we will delve into all of this and more. Of course, we are welcoming guest speakers for tonight's show as well. So, if you would like to appear on the show, please do send me a DM and we can get you into the studio, as there is accommodation for speakers, as you can see. So yeah, as you can see, we've also got all the new branding as well. Big thanks to Hemsright for that. Smashing into 2026 with a brand new look. Looks absolutely amazing, so thank you, Hemsright, for that. But yes, if you'd like to come on, please do get in contact. So without further ado, then let's get on with tonight's show. Well, I suppose the elephant in the room is, of course, the government's collapse, the um, um, new military government, and all of that. So, where do we start? Well, let's start at the beginning, I suppose. That's a sensible place to start. Also, just to answer the DM I've just received about appearing as a guest on text chat, we're only really taking people in voice chat. So, if you can call on voice chat, then you can come on. If not, then unfortunately, I'm going to say no on that. But anyway, cracking on with the show then. So, yeah, so where do we start then? Well, it all goes back to the fallout and collapse of the government. Why did that occur, you may be asking? Well, for some time now, the leader of the Unionist Party, Drac 710, who has only recently won his election as party leader following the departure of Candux, the previous leader of the Unionists, who brought them into the coalition in the first place. Drac has been working alongside the Greg's party in hopes to secure a merger between the two parties and sort of save a drowning unionist party that has completely fallen off of the mountain of success, I suppose it once was standing on. And so this government, or sorry, this party, the Unionist Party, it being a great party a long time ago, very successful. You had big names like the TBU, British Union, who's now the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, but more on that in a moment. And even Michael Rothschild himself. And back then, in those golden times for the party, Drac was a big name. Cabinet minister on various accounts, I believe, and has recently returned to the party, taking up leadership. Now, for some time now, the Unionist Party has been dropping in the polls. The Greg's Party, which is obviously headed by former big Unionist leader Michael, has completely obliterated any form of relevance it once had, as well as other emerging parties such as the Nationals and the Four Star Party. Four Star in particular has seen quite a few defections from the Unionists, like Osex and Hemsright, for example. And also, of course, the Gregs has seen defections from the Unionists as well, with voters from the Unionists following suit. So it's no surprise, really, that the Unionist Party is in its twilight days. And so, in order to secure the party's future, it would appear that Drac opted to merge the party with the Greg's party and try and get some form of success for it, or some survivability for the party, some option for survivability. So in such a move, to secure this coalition, he went, you know what, fuck the law, I'm going to go and do my own thing. And he's been leaking information protected in servers that are protected by the Official Secrets Act. For those of you who do not know what that is, it is a law that protects sensitive government information that is to be kept confidential between only those who have access to that material, so that's all the government servers and dealings within that. So in a breach of OSA, a lot of information was handed between the Unionist leader Drac and the Greg's party about sort of the activity of the government and various things that was happening there. And this is all going on in the shadows, with the British public completely unaware, and also completely unaware of the potential merger. Whilst we're on the subject of the merger as well, let's go into the actual details. So it would be headed by Drac should the merger go ahead. He would be the leader on their proposed lineup. The chairman would be Michael, who is of course the current Greg's leader, and continuing in the post of deputy leader would be Chocolate, who's been on the Adrian Show before as well. And he's been the deputy leader of the Greg's party for quite some time. The potential name of the party would be the Unionist and Greg's party, and there are other allocations in there as well. But those are the main names that we will consider there. So anyway, in an attempt to get this merger, he's leaked all this sensitive information illegally to the Greg's party sort of senior leadership, and then it was recently released yesterday by the published media that all this had been going on, and exposed in a big sort of investigation. So then the Prime Minister, or now former Prime Minister, Sunnison, didn't take too kindly to this news, and then then sort of ended things with the Unionist Party in regards to coalition. And that is where that came to an end. She released a letter, very unhappy with the way things had gone. It appears that she had been aware of the leakings there, but sort of not really said anything, and then it went public, and then she sort of shut it all down and has stated that she would be pursuing the full force of the law in terms of trying to deal with breaches. But whilst we wait to continue, I have had a message from the quite prominent former Foreign Secretary for about 90 minutes, Dragged Fork, asking to come on, so we will be having him on there, so I will send him the link to the studio. Dragged, if you're listening, please just walk through the door and sit on the sofa once you're in game and all the rest of it, and give me a call on Discord as well. But whilst we wait for Dragged, just continuing on for a little bit there then. So continuing on, the government has continued onwards with the the government has split as a result of this coalition split. So the Drac was sacked as deputy prime minister, and so with some other unionist ministers and so on, and then Sunnison then wrote to the king to suspend parliament and also to call for a general election, and that is where that sits up to. So I am just quickly dealing with unlocking the game here for Dragged, because I forgot to make it playable, I believe. So I do apologise if I am a little bit distracted. But I will. But yes, so continue onwards then. It does appear that they split, and it's not. The Prime Minister is not happy about that at all. Sorry, Dragged. You should. Oh, it's unrated. That'll be why. Sorry, I am having to quickly set this up so that people can join. I didn't realise that was an issue. But yes, I mean, yeah, sorry, it has split. The government has split, and so as a result, the prime minister then called for an election from the king. Now, that is not where things ended. In fact, um, the king has now put forwards a military government from British Armed Forces, and that is where things are going to be headed. So the Prime Minister is, of course, the Chief of Defence Staff, Ismail Wellesley. He's also the Duke of York, being a prominent member within BAF for some time. He was in, I believe he started his career in the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment, that is going back quite some time, which then merged with the Scots Guards into the Household Cavalry, so he served in the Household Cavalry for a long time. I served with him for that time, so I do know Ismail from my time in there. He worked his way up the ranks, then eventually made his way to the top as commanding officer of the Household Cavalry. Then the Grenadier Guards was commissioned and a Household Division was formed, and he was sort of promoted up to Brigadier. And then he led the Household Division for some time until being promoted up to General and appointed as Chief of General Staff, succeeding the now King, of course, which is Alexander Wellesley, who was at the time the Chief of General Staff up to that point. I believe somewhat recently he was then promoted up to Chief of General Staff, replacing Ryan Mountbatten, and has been in that position for quite some time. So he has had an extensive amount of service within BAF. And as a result, that's where things sit at the moment with that. Right, Drag, you should be able to join now, and just call me on Discord, voice chat in the messages or whatever, private messages. Anyway, but yeah, so that's the Prime Minister, Ismail. He's now the Prime Minister, and we've also got some other big names in there as well. Now, it's quite confusing because it is allegedly a military government. However, there are some lords in there as well. So let's take, for example, the Earl of Lothian, TBU, who is the Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Scotland. That's an interesting one, as there isn't really much of a Scotland here. I know there have been moves specifically from him to start that. But yeah, he's the Prime Minister, or sorry, the Deputy Prime Minister now, and Secretary of State for Scotland. But joining us now to interrupt things, we will cover more of the government later. We now have Dragged Fork, who I will now pick up the call with, and I believe he is in the studio with us now, or she should be. Dragged, if you just take a seat on one of those sofas to the side, that'd be great. Hello, Dragged. How are you doing?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So yeah, obviously we've seen the collapse of the government, which is the Social Democrat Party you're a member of. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe you sit on the National Executive Committee, I believe, for the party.
Yes, yes.
And so therefore it's sort of your government's collapse. So what's your take on the whole thing? What's your opinion of what the Unionist Party have done with regards to government?
Well, the overall situation is indeed very interesting, and the decision made by the Unionists is somewhat, especially for me personally, disappointing, because after all, this was an opportunity for them to show themselves as team players. This wasn't only an opportunity for us as the party which has one plurality. We could have had anybody else in the in our coalition, and we ended up, as you know, with these partners who have now left us after multiple serious infractions. I would like to say, and the whole debacle which ended up with yesterday's declaration, proclamation of elections. And now we have the BAF government.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that Sunnocence is going to try and sort of take legal action against the unionist leaders, or sorry, ministers involved in the leaking of OSA material. Now, what would you say about that then? Any comments on that?
Well, the Prime Minister, of course, is in her right to undertake any sort of legal action. About its outcome, as I have told people, I'm not a legal professional in this group, so I do not know what constitutes breaches of OSA and such, but there is a certain degree of evidence which has been provided, and I suppose it really does seem like there might be some sort of grounds for legal action.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. But it's quite interesting. The mayor of Middletown, Edward Molyneux, who is a member of the Greg's Party of Northern Ireland, has recently condemned the Prime Minister for being hypocritical. So obviously, she has, attacked the unionists for leaking OSA material. However, in her latest campaign post in the UK server, she's used some pictures of Michael in his role of group staff. I believe sort of not being completely clued up on things is the angle I think she's trying to give, and to sort of being a bit of a pullback on things. However, the mayor of Middletown, Mr. Molyneux, has claimed that these screenshots come from an OSA channels and are protected by such, and that so Sunnocence has been completely hypocritical by attacking the unionists for leaking OSA and then doing exactly the same herself. What would you say about that then?
Well, I currently have the screenshot open in front of myself, and first and foremost, I do not see any sort of OSA in the name of a server, which is something that you, as somebody who has served in many roles where you have to take the necessary oaths to be able to partake in the goings, usually such GCs and servers would first and foremost have an OSA tag in front of the name. And secondly, I really do not know what constitutes breach of Official Secrets Act in the Northern Ireland. And I believe that the Prime Minister would, to the best of her ability, try to avoid making herself seem hypocritical. So from what I can see, it is either not a clearly defined OSA communication, or she was able to lift the OSA mark from the chat either by her own power or by the power of group staff or somebody else responsible.
Right. Okay. I mean, okay, but supposedly say it is OSA because it does look like it is, and she has broken the law by doing such. I mean, that is hypocritical though, to attack the unionists for doing that and then doing the exact same herself in that scenario, where it turns out that it is. So I mean, it could be completely. It's entirely up to what the courts do, because I do think Mr. Molyneux is going to pursue legal action. So it will be the judge that makes the decision there. So we will have to wait and see that. But I do think that could be quite hypocritical then. But anyway, moving on to the government's term. Obviously, this being your party, the Social Democrat Party, it's been under a lot of criticism this term for general weakness, poorly written bills, ChatGPT, and just it's been a bit wet in my opinion. What would your thoughts be on that?
Well, first and foremost, I've already made this clear to party colleagues, is the fact that the power dynamics were pretty as I would like to term them broken, due to the fact that the plurality that the Social Democrats had was not what is desirable. And as much as we have tried to maintain, for example, parliamentary activity, we we of course saw our coalition partners who failed to fill seats and such. So it was always the issue of not being able to command a proper majority because we did not have a proper majority in the elections. And while in the proportional representation system, a majority is extremely hard to come by, large plurality would be something that's very much desired. And second, uh, the shall I say I would term it claim of certain degree of incompetence would be attributed by me at least to the fact that the Social Democrats tend to incorporate new hope, future leaders. Some parties, Gregs, nationalists, unionists, they have a tendency to recycle people. So you will constantly see older players getting roles, sometimes even rising to the top of party leadership. And in the SD, what we try is that we try to bring new people in to allow them to show themselves, and that of course has its faults because when you're assembling a group of veterans, you know exactly what their abilities are. If they're your friends, you know exactly what time of year they can be active and such. And with novice people, you do not have that advantage. So it's a double-edged sword, But at the same time, you're giving people tons of hands-on experience. But I also believe that can be a pretty negative thing if it's mishandled, because at the end of the day, you do make the citizenry suffer because the confidence of a minister's mistake is going to affect the populace in general.
I mean, yeah, I do see your point you're making there, but ultimately it is, the country's best interest that needs to be put forward. And some of these politicians are quite experienced. I mean, I know Sanderson's been in the game for quite some time. I'm sure Terminal Plus has as well. I think he's actually he's been in the house for a long time. Jam's been around for a while. I don't know. I think Finsby must have I mean, he's group staff on Ireland, so clearly he's got some experience. So there are some experienced people, but they're not very good at being particularly decisive or particularly good at making decisions. It just seems a bit wet to me. I mean, Sanderson's, she's very good at yapping in the Commons, but I don't really know what she's on about half the time. She just takes bloody years to talk about bloody nothing. And
Oh, well,
then, oh,
I do have to. I have the ability to answer immediately, and that is first and foremost attributed to the fact that the Social Democrats have been in the opposition for a better part of a year for winning this latest election. So that is why we have, as a party, perfected the art of proposing arguments and scrutiny instead of proper decision making, because we simply do not have, let's say, forgotten a bit how it is to be in power.
I mean, yeah, but that's true. But I mean, when it comes to governments, right? Even in opposition, you can still practice that decisiveness and decision making. I mean, look at moves to the parties. When it comes to deciding on policy, they go, right, okay, well, we're going to do this, let's go and do it then. It's not really a skill set of being in opposition or government, it's just a general thing. And I think when you've been a party leader for that long, you should at least be able to do that. If you can't, then find someone better to do the job. Because as a PM, you need to be able to make decisions. And sitting there in Parliament, or blabbering on about nothing, and then to calling British people racist for signing petitions and deleting petitions, I don't think is a particularly good way of governing, quite frankly.
Well, I believe that the Prime Minister has sometimes been and other members of the government too outspoken, because after all, sometimes giving your own raw opinion is not the best, especially politically speaking, decision that you can make. And that is also something I suppose could be a consequence of being in the opposition, because you do tend to attempt to win the shall I say opinion of the voters, sway the opinion of the voters by basically uh, trying to reset the emotional side of them. You know what I'm trying to say, because of course you are in a opposition party, so you would always try to get into the brain of the average voter. And when it is applied to actually running the government, you sort of need to think on a much larger scale. And I believe that that is one of the most crucial mistakes that has been made, because people tend to act like this is all a, should I say, a GC meeting, while it's actually affecting a group of couple thousand people.
I mean, that's a good point. I would agree with you. I think a lot of people do make that mistake, but I mean, you know, the whole thing. I mean, you do have to be in touch with people. You do have to speak to a lot of people, definitely within government. But there's no reason why you can't be a little bit decisive and make decisions and not be so bloody woke or wet or anything of that sort. But I mean, let's have a look at some of the policies that have been forwards. I mean, let's have a look at the budget, for example. 800 Robux to foreign business outsourcing activity. Obviously, that didn't go well down in the House, and it failed the first time round, resulting in opposition parties' demands for it to be dropped being met. I mean, what would you say about that? I mean, it's quite an embarrassing feat for a government to lose the budget, and it's also quite embarrassing to be siphoning off Robux to foreign businesses. I mean, that's one good example of a failing. You've also got the ChatGPT bill that Kamala put forward prior to her resignation, and some of the rather sloppy filler policy bills from Jam haven't been all too good either. And has all received a lot of opposition within the Commons. Now, what would your thoughts be on that? Like, why are we seeing these rubbish policies and rubbish bills being put through the Commons by the government? Or why have we? Because obviously they're not the government anymore, but the now former government, I suppose.
Well, I would first like to address the budget uh, situation. Is that, well, while back in the day, 2024, it was very uncommon to see a budget fail. But I believe, like nearly all recent parliaments, please, if correct me if I'm wrong, we have actually seen the budget not pass vote for the first time, if I'm not wrong. So this isn't really a social democrats first, and our policy regarding the 800 Robux assigned to foreign businesses was a novice thing, rarely done before, and it had a strategy in it. It had a reason in it, but of course, sometimes not everyone is gonna understand the reason, not gonna go along with it, dislike it, and we took the input we got from the public and from the opposition, and we, of course, changed the budget, and it passed later on. And that also goes with the jam bills. If there's something wrong with the bill, we get told either directly during debate in the Commons. For example, just last session, like the last legislative session, I think that was on Saturday, you had a jam withdrawing a bill because the opposition had an issue with a certain part of it. So that just shows that we are not trying to be some headstrong, authoritarian party. We do tend to listen to the people around us, and myself and San and Ebony would be more than happy to hear your input, either best channeled through the various channels and petitions, or directly in DMs. Really depends on.
Well, I mean, when we put
I would
petitions
suggest.
forwards, then the or now former Prime Minister deleted them. I'm on about
Well,
the. Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, the petitions were deemed by the Prime Minister. From what I regained at this moment, because there were multiple petitions, so I need to, go through it.
No worries.
Uh,
I'm on about the
the
Trinidad and Tobago petition put forward by the Right On in regards to Kamla's bill being uh, based off of the legislation from Trinidad and Tobago,
well,
and then sort of a petition put forward by the Right On, backed by and endorsed by all three major opposition parties. And that was received, I believe it was quite a hefty amount of signatures, and was even ready for debate, and then got deleted by Sunnocence relatively quickly.
well, from what I see, the Prime Minister deleted the petition. Despite them being the end.
Yeah, she deleted it completely from the website, but I don't think the British people are too happy with their petitions being deleted. There are a lot of signatures on there, and I've seen a lot of people unhappy. Just regular folk as well, not just politicians, but regular folk are
Yeah,
not happy
right.
with this.
Trinidad and the Tobago petition, right? Sorry, I had a DM. BF business. So from what I recall, the Prime Minister said that it was unfit for debate, and I stand behind her decision as a party leader. And that's really all I gotta say about it, because it is at the end of the day her judgment.
I mean, yeah, but I don't think it is unfair, because why does someone get to decide whether it is or not? I mean, well, all these people think it's fit for debate. I thought it was fit for debate. There's nothing stupidly wrong with it. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable petition in my eyes. It's an issue people are concerned about, and I think that just silencing people's opinions is not a good way to govern. So,
Because the
I
government took the necessary measures to alleviate the problems already, and uh, was taking them. Depend. So basically, there was no need for a petition at that moment because it was already being resolved. Kamala left and all. Everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to stop future incursions from happening, and sort of a formal way of holding the government to account for that. But with that, anyway, that's sort of all I have for you, Dragged. So thank you very much for coming on. It's been good to have you on, and I wish you a lovely rest of your evening. Of course, anyone else wanting to come on, please do send me a little DM. But yeah, with that, thanks, Dragged. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Okay, lovely. Well, you're welcome to exit the studio then. And that was a Dragged Fork leader, or sorry, a member of the National Executive Committee, and previously Foreign Secretary in one of the iterations of the reshuffle. And that is that's Dragged. So, well, there you go. There's his thoughts on some things and some challenges from myself. So we will put forward a poll to see who you thought won that debate about the government, because why not? We love a bit of engagement with the viewers, and of course. You're welcome to vote in that should you wish to. And if anyone else would like to come on and have a little speak, do get in contact. But moving on with what we're going to be talking about tonight. So earlier I was talking about the military government and some of its consequences of its existence. So the military government, obviously I was talking about, led by Ismail Wellesley, previous general and so on, has seen various lords and military generals appointed, so some senior officers there, royal family members, But I find it funny they use the term military government when it's really more of a Lords government. I believe the only person who doesn't actually sit in the House of Lords is, of course, the new Northern Ireland Secretary, who is the Chief of General Staff of the British Army, which is General Globe, or Globesy, and the rest of them. I mean, there are some royals in there, so they're not exactly sitting peers, although I do believe they can sit if they want. Don't quote me on that. But there are some just purely Lords people in there. I mean, let's take a look. Earl of Lothian, TBU is the Deputy Prime Minister. The Earl of Sandwich, which is Exarchos, is the Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary. As far as I'm aware, he's not in Bath. I know he has been very junior ranks in the past. I don't think he's currently. The Earl of Hendon, which is, of course, David Rothschild, is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, also another former Prime Minister, much like TBU. And he was previously an RAF officer, but is no longer concurrently serving. So that's who we've got on within the cabinet. As well, joining them we have Princess Margaret of Wales, and Lord Formula, who's the Foreign Secretary, which is of course Export Formula. He's a he's an RAF officer, as well as a member of the House of Lords. Also, just to mention, Princess Margaret of Wales is the Secretary of State for Home Department and Secretary of State for Local Government and Transport. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, General Globesy is the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. So that is the current new cabinet for the Lords government. Now, or not really Lords government, but military government with a lot of Lords in it. So what are my thoughts on it then? Well, I think it's absolutely diabolical that we have unelected officials running the country. Now, don't get me wrong, the previous government was absolutely dreadful, but at least there was room for elected members of the Commons to scrutinise them every week, attack them in the Commons, and there was room for debate, and sometimes they could make a decision that was not that bad, very rare, and often came from liaising with other people from outside of their government, which they did occasionally listen to others, eventually, but also because they were sort of in a position where they had no other choice. But that's that. So yeah, I don't think a Lord's government, quite frankly, is something that we should be having. It always kills politics. It kills the media sector because there's not really much to talk about. So if you don't hear me much on the Adrian Show going forwards, don't be surprised. I don't really have those to talk about. But I suppose we can see what developments happen. Hopefully there will be stuff because I do like doing my little shows and what have you. And I do love the media industry, it's great. And I do think this is unfortunate for the industry, and this might have the potential to, harm activity and so on. But, I think the sooner we get rid of the sooner we get our election, the better. And the reason why this has been put forward, and we're not getting an election immediately, by the way, for anyone who's unaware, the Electoral Commission is still working on their new sort of infrastructure they're going to be implementing going forward. So that is regional elections with independent MPs and regional party MPs as well. So that will be coming out soon, but it's not quite there yet. So that's why there's been a bit of a interim motion. Now, personally, I think the Prime Minister should have actually checked with the Electoral Commission chair, which is of course none other than TBU. It is the Earl of Lothian, of course, and I think she should have checked with him to actually go, okay, mate, are we ready for the new infrastructure? And then made her decision of that, because I'd much rather have a commons-based government with actual MPs rather than lords and military officers and all the rest of it. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against Bath. I mean, I've spent 2 years in there. I have a lot of respect for it, but it's, it's the military, so I think they should be focusing on that. But also, secondly, they're not really elected. There's no way for elected figures to scrutinise them, and it does sort of harm activities. There's not really much opposition. They can sort of do what they want, so we are going to see quite authoritarian things going forward. Because they're not really politicians, they're not really too experienced with policies and all that sort of thing either. You need, a good sort of foundational political understanding to come up with policy. I mean, there are some politicians in there, don't be wrong. We've got 2 former prime ministers in there. But yes, that's where we're at. We've just received an announcement within the UK server that Sunnysent, who's the previous Prime Minister, met with Ismail Abdulhassan, who's the... I don't know if he's the Prime Minister anymore, but she met with him, and he accepted and gave her the role of Prime Minister for the evening, and an appointment statement will be out in about 10 minutes. So we will keep dragging this on until that gets out, because I would like to read that out, and I can read that out to everybody here and give my little commentary on it. So yeah, in the meantime, if anyone does want to come on, feel free to pop me a DM as well. I love having people on the show, so if you do want to come on, do let us know. But we will be commenting on that when it comes out. But we want, the Lord's government is not something that's particularly good for democracy. It's not going to be good for the UK at all, I don't think, and it's certainly not going to be good for things like that. We have had a message from a former Social Democrat. I think he was an emergency services minister who was held that role up until the sort of replacement of the government, which is of course none other than AX Lion asking to come on. So yes, I would love to have you on. I will send you the link to the studios, so just hop on there and find a little seat on the sofa somewhere and give me a call on Discord once you're here. But yeah, we'll bringing him on, the Social Democrat Emergency Services Minister, so it would be great to hear his take on things whilst we await the Prime Minister's statement. But yeah, going back to my little commentary on the Lord's government, I mean, it's killing the democracy within the UK. There's no... I hate Lord's governments. It never works. It always kills activity for a bit. They don't really get things, and it's just the deep state. It's literally the deep state final boss. I think the Lords already have too much power, and it's my belief that we need to put things forward to try and limit that power, because they always seem to intervene and think that they know what's best. Don't get me wrong, they are experienced. I think it's good we listen to their recommendations, but I think their powers need to be limited. They hold more power than the real life House of Lords does, of course, hold, and all the rest of it. We are just welcoming on the emergency services, now former emergency services minister, X-Line, onto the show. I believe he's in the studio with me. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing this evening?
Hello. Is my mic working?
Yeah, it's working fine. So hello, how are you doing this evening then?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, thanks yourself. So I mean, I've been talking about the Lord's military government thing for quite some time now on the show. Seeing as you were in the government up until what's happened now. I mean, I'm not quite sure what's happened now because now it seems to be Sunnessence is being reappointed as Prime Minister or something. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But what's your opinion on the whole situation with the military government?
Well, I've seen this a few times over the past few years, and to be perfectly honest, I kind of agree with what you've said. I think I would have just kept the caretaker government for 2 weeks until the general election. Obviously, the snap election was going to be a bit delayed because of the whole thing about preparing for independent candidates. But I think in the end, we were the elected government. Keep the elected government as a caretaker until the general election can take place. I don't see the point in any of this.
I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, that's what happened last time. It's a very similar situation to um, last election, by the way. For any viewers, what happened was last time it was the Solidarity Party elected Scripted Zach, who's now just left. I'll talk about that a bit later, maybe, because I forgot about that. And he pulled out of the coalition with the Greg's Party. And an election was triggered. In the meantime, the sort of weakened minority Greg's Party was a caretaker government. Parliament was suspended, and just like it was yesterday. So I think you're absolutely right. The inclusion of a military government is completely unnecessary and just kills activity and is genuinely pointless. I think I've been absolutely fine with the caretaker government taking us forwards to the next election in, a couple of weeks, whenever that may be. But I mean, hey ho, that's my take on it all. So, going back to the reason why the government collapsed, what's your take on what the Unionist Party have been doing behind the scenes then with their OSA leakages and so on?
Yeah, obviously I was in government during that, and I kind of seen that through, but that was all quite shocking for me. I seen Drac was appointed as Home Secretary, and then I didn't have any contact with him. There was nothing that happened, and then that was pretty much the first thing I seen from him was that being reported. So as soon as I seen that, I wasn't really happy working with him. So I'm glad to see he went, but he's been claiming that it was a setup or something. I'm not too sure. I mean, it has been seen that people were faking messages. I think I can't remember. Was it Solidarity? We're putting that out.
I think it's been a chap known as iPhone Gameplay 22 who's been he's
Yeah.
been doctoring messages. He doctored one of Drag's messages he went earlier on the show, saying that he hated Solidarity. He sent me one earlier actually. I haven't really replied to it or done anything with it. It was from Rio HR, another Social Democrat minister, saying, I fucking hate this government and the Social Democrats. I love Greg's. They are the real alternative. Now, obviously, I don't buy into that because it's a load of bullshit and anyone with any brain cells can see that. But that is who's been behind the doctored messages, I think. So, but either way, it does seem that the Unionists have been, conspiring behind the scenes. But the next question I will ask you is obviously Sunnessence condemned this, is going to take legal action. But the Mayor of Middletown, Edward Molyneux, who is from the Greg's Party of Northern Ireland, has accused her of being a hypocrite because she's been doing exactly the same thing with leaking some official OSA protected information for campaigning purposes in the UK server. Allegedly, I don't know how OSA it is, but that's what he said in his statement. What would your take on that be then?
Well, I'm pretty much the same as yourself. Just said there. I'm not really too sure what would be OSA to do with that and how bad it would be. But obviously, Sun did give me the chance to be in government, and she gave me those positions. And obviously, as part of, I joined her party. I support it, so I do back Sun. But at the end of the day, leaking OSA, as Drac did, it can't be tolerated. So I would back Sun, but if action needs to be taken, then so be it. But I do appreciate the fact that the Mayor of Midland is actually willing to stand up. And maybe if he is right, and if all this is true, then at least there's someone willing to stand up for the people of Northern Ireland.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment, I think. So let's have a look at the performance of the government over the last term. Let's have a look at the budget that failed. The expenses for the 800 Robux promised in expenses to foreign business was not well received by anyone, I don't think. I've even heard claims that people within the government weren't particularly a fan of Noah Finsby. What would your take be on all of that, on the economic side of things and Noah Finsby and all the rest of it?
Look, obviously, I was only in government as a Home Office minister. I was EMS minister, and then I was a caretaker home sec for less than 24 hours. So, someone get me in the history books. But look, I was never particularly involved with the economic side of it, but obviously I was there. I voted. I seen the legislation. When it comes to, obviously, it was a minority government. So if the opposition wanted, they would just shut down our legislation. Obviously, the King's Speech passed. That was 4-star. Somewhat due to them as well helping and other opposition MPs. But when it comes to something like the budget, obviously, with a minority government, your opposition can just form together and shoot you down, which is what happened. But obviously, in the end, it passed. So I think in the end, that's the important thing. And as a Home Office Minister, I seen more money coming in for Public Servant of the Month. So I seen the Home Office better under that budget. So I would support it, and I did, of course.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there was some definitely good parts of that budget, and I did voice that to Noah at the time, but I think in particular the 800 Robux in foreign investment was absurd, and that was what got dropped, and I mean, that combined with increased government attendance was probably how that managed to pass, but yeah, what would your take on that specific policy be? I mean, I know it's not really your field, economics, but just what would your take on that be?
Look, at the end of the day, obviously, foreign policy is so important, but obviously, money in our budget should be staying within UK borders. So, I guess if I was making it, I wouldn't have that in there. But it's not really my job to get up and say, well, this Chancellor who did this, a month, 2 months ago, he was wrong. And, he's so bad for doing that. Because at the end of the day, what good does that do? But yeah, if it were down to me, I wouldn't have done it really. But hindsight's always 2020. So
Okay, so there we go. There we go, folks. Social Democrat minister condemns foreign expenses. Right, sorry, I've got to get my sensational headline out there. But anyway,
we got
continuing.
something for the tabloids.
Yeah, exactly. Something for the tabloids. I might stick that as my headline actually for the Northern Times at some point. But here we are then. So yeah, moving onwards then. Let's talk about the Home Office. This is actually quite an interesting one because obviously this is your sort of area of expertise. Now, yesterday there was a petition debated by Parliament about extending sentence times. This is put forward by an old friend of mine who I know serves as an inspector within the Met Police. So he said it's an issue for him. And I've spoken to a lot of private sector employees who've been finding that when you go in Westbridge and you go to the main bit or whatever, or you're just minding your own business, and some guy comes along and he stabs you to bits, or he blows you up, or he shoots you to bits, and then you go back and then he does the same thing every 5 minutes, and it gets a bit annoying. And I think that's the main point he was getting at there. So, do you think that sentencing times for those crimes specifically should have been raised?
Well, I am a police constable and I have been for, I think, 10 months now. And it was in the past. So I do see that, obviously. But I think there's good arguments on both sides, and I've seen it from both sides, that if you increase sentence times, what's just going to stop crime? And in essence, that would kill Westbridge, which has happened. And then Westbridge is very prone to that. And then, obviously, the main argument come from it is that sentence times aren't high enough and they're not a deterrent. I wasn't at that petition debate yesterday. I was busy, but it was non-mandatory, and I don't think many were there, to be perfectly honest. Because Parliament had already been sitting for 2 days before, so I think for most people it was just a couldn't be bothered thing turning up. I don't think the majority of people really care. I think you only find people in OCGs who are being arrested every 10 minutes for murder, and people in Met really care. And I would kind of say that I sit somewhat on the fence there. So I can see both sides, and both sides have valid arguments.
I would be inclined to agree with you on a general outlook towards it. I think I think some crimes we definitely could cut the sentence times. In fact, that was my party's policy at the previous election. On that side of things,
I wouldn't.
Oh.
Sorry, I wouldn't cut sentence times, but the only thing I'd be on the fence about is just about increasing them. I've seen someone say that they ought to make a new, more legislation that would make it a crime to kill private sector employees. I wouldn't support that because they're just civilians. So I don't really know what. I think that might have been a petition.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't support that.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I do remember hearing about something like that. I think that might have been something I might have been involved in, or I know that's something I've talked about before. I don't know if I made a petition about it, but I have talked about that before. So I want to hear your thoughts on that because, from my perspective, a lot of the time, a lot of organised crime, whatever, it does generally seem to be targeted, and I have a problem with that. Leave them to it, but. I think when it comes to just, people on their jobs, driving a truck or whatever, or a bus, and they get stabbed to bits every 5 seconds, a lot of them are complaining to me about that just discourages them from playing Westbridge, and so that as a result, private sector activity has been dropping. I spoke to about God knows how many people at the last Westbridge Business Expo about this, and that's what they're all telling me. So that's entirely where I got that idea from. So yeah, I just want to hear your logic a little bit more in depth behind why you'd be against that.
Well, I'm the private sector. I pretty much have been for all my time in Westbridge, so I do understand what they're saying. But at the end of the day, I understand the charge of murder in EMS, and I support that being its own charge with an increased sentence. But it doesn't make sense to have one for private sector because at the end of the day, they are just civilians. But as far as what you did say about people becoming bored of the private sector, to be perfectly honest, the private sector gets boring quickly. Like, I mean, driving a fake red lorry about on a roadblock scene, like, let's be honest, it's it's only going to be exciting for some time. I think the Westbridge only really gets exciting when you're in emergency services or something like that. So maybe it's not that. Maybe it is part of that. OCGs do obviously target. I can't say I've heard of one targeting a private company, or at least not. It isn't the first thing that comes to my mind. But I probably don't have a doubt that it's happened. But as far as it being a separate charge, I don't really see a point in that, and it doesn't really make any sense to me.
Okay, interesting to hear your opinions on that. There's definitely some good arguments there. Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about something else. It's escaped my mind. Oh yeah, the transport sector. I know this isn't really in your control as much, but I mean, it is your party and you're involved with government, so I suppose you have probably had discussions about it. Now, the transport department was originally going to be scrapped by the Social Democrats. It was in their manifesto. However, they subsequently dropped this pledge under the covers quite quickly. And so, in what is my view a completely useless department, has been kept on. So why is this?
Well, you said that the pledge was dropped. To my knowledge, it wasn't, because I heard this being talked about just before Parliament was dissolved, maybe 2 days before, and there was talk of it happening later this month, as it was still being continued on, but it wasn't first on the agenda. There was more important things to be done. Legislation was being passed through, so it was to be done. but obviously, considering the circumstances, it won't be now. But it was a manifesto pledge.
Okay, that's actually very interesting to hear, because I do remember a few weeks ago hearing somewhere that they were going to drop it completely. So evidently they clearly brought it back up. So that's good, because I mean I did launch a petition saying we should abolish it. And at the time, I just assumed it was the unionists, one of their demands or something for entering government, and that they had someone like, I don't know, goalkeeper who was probably. I have no idea what his opinions on the department is, but I just assumed it was someone like that wanted to keep it on. But clearly not. But anyway, thanks for answering that. I think that's all of my questions about the government and so on. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before I sort of move on, or even bring things to a close?
I can't really think of anything myself.
Okay, well, with that then, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. Great to have you on, and I do hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.
Right, you too. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Right, folks. Well, that was ex-line from the Social Democrat Party, former Emergency Services Minister, and very briefly former Home Secretary, talking about his experiences and views from the government approach, and his views on the military government. Now, whilst that was all going on, it does appear that the Prime Minister's messages, or sorry, not the Prime Minister anymore, Sanderson's messages about about her being reappointed Prime Minister were just deleted by Ismail. So I'm assuming that's a load of like nonsense that she came out with, and is not happening. And it's been probably about 10 minutes, and there's no statement there. So. With that, then, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about tonight. The other subjects I was going to mention pretty much came up in those interviews as well. So I've covered everything I wanted to talk about tonight. So, and it's been about an hour now as well. So thank you all very much for tuning in to the show tonight. I hope you liked all of our new graphics. I certainly do. I think it makes the studio look so much better. And I do like the sort of new sofa we've installed there as well. So bringing people on in the future, we'll definitely see more of that going forwards. If you ever do want to come on the show, do hit me a DM. We can get something sorted. Maybe even get some debates going. It would be great to see some stuff like that going on. But with that, thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. Please do keep an eye out for future broadcasts. With that, I've been Adrian, here live from our studios in London. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a lovely